Okay, looking at our 5 under 5 for quadratics, day 2. So looking at the first one, we have a difference of 2 squares. So we can write that as 9 squared minus b squared equals 0, which means we can then write 9 minus b, 9 plus b in our brackets, which then means that we can solve that as b is equal to 9 or negative 9. In the second one, we can look along that line and see a common factor of 5. So we want to take any common factors out first. So that gives us 5 outside of x squared minus 5x take 6 equals 0, which we can then factorise as we're looking for what will multiply to give negative 6, but add to give negative 5. So it's going to be negative 6 and 1, x take away 6, x plus 1 goes in the brackets, equals 0. And then when we solve it, we can say that x must be equal to 6 or negative 1. For our number 3, we need to first move that 36 over to the other side. So we've got x squared plus 5x take 36 is equal to 0. And now we can factorise that using our monic quadratic method like we did up here, where our a is equal to 1, b is equal to 5, c is equal to negative 36. So we're looking for two numbers that will multiply to give negative 36, but add to give 5. So that's going to be positive 9 and negative 4. That means we can put that straight into the brackets. X plus 9, x take away 4 equals 0, which means that x is equal to negative 9 or positive 4. Now the next part that we've been doing in this series of 5 under 5 is then sketching our work. So sketching some of those equations. So first we're going to sketch number 2. Now we already know our x-intercepts are at 6 and negative 1. This means we can then find our turning point because it has to be halfway between those two. So if we do 6 take away negative 1, we'll get 7. When we halve that, it'll be 3.5. So that means we are doing 6 take away 3.5 or negative 1 plus 3.5. So our turning point is at 2.5. We then need a y-coordinate for that turning point. So we need to sub that back into either of these equations, so the original or the factorized form. Now the factorized form is probably the easier one to sub it back into. So we have got 5 times, and we can put that bracket straight into our calculator. So we've got x take away 6. So if we've got 2.5 take away 6, and then we've got 2.5 plus 1. Which gives us negative 61.25. So now we have our x-intercepts, our turning point, we need our y-intercept. Now our y-intercept is when x equals 0. So we can again go back to either of those two forms of the equation. Always easier to go back into the factorised form. So we've got 0 take away 6, which is going to be negative 6, and 0 plus 1 is going to be 1. So negative 6 times 1 is going to be negative 6, and we're timesing it by 5, which is negative 30. We also know that from the original one because on the end we have the negative 30. So if we put a 0 in there, we will get the negative 30. We now have what we need to sketch our graph. So we need 6 and negative 1 for our intercepts. We've got our halfway point at 2.5 for our turning point, and we know that we have to go down to negative 61.25 and negative 30. So we'll put a negative 30, negative 61.25. It's a sketch, so I can just be really rough in how I do that. So I've got my turning point there. I'm coming down, up, there. So that's our quick sketch for that one. Then we go on to our number 3. We want to sketch by completing the square. So our number 3 had x squared plus 5x equals 36. So our first step we did already on when we looked at that for solving is we took that 36 over. Now we want to do it this time by completing the square. So if we've got x squared plus 5x, we want to make that x plus 5 on 2 in the bracket squared. Now when we expand that out, we're going to get x squared plus 5x. We already know that bit. And then we want the 5 on 2 squared, which would just be 25 on 4. To make it a little bit easier to work with, we can do the 25 divided by 4, and we can just write it as 6.25. So then we have a plus 6.25, but we want it to be negative 36. So what are we going to take away? So we will do take away 42.25. So now when we write it, we can have x squared, the x plus 5 on 2 squared, take 42.25 as our equation. That means that our turning point is going to be at that 5 on 2, well, negative 5 on 2, which would be negative 2.5, negative 42.25. That's our turning point. We already got our x-intercepts when we solved it back on the first page. So when we solved it, we got negative 9 or positive 4 as our x-intercepts. Now our y-intercept, we can again go back to that original and we know that it's going to be negative 36 by subbing in 0 up here. 0 squared plus 0, take away 36. So that is our y-intercept, is negative 36. And so we can now sketch that information. So we have got our negative 2.5, we want negative 9 and 4. And we've got that negative 2.5 in the middle there. We know that's going down to 42.5 there. It's going to be crossing here at negative 36. And I'll make that at 36 is probably a bit closer there. And we have our very, very rough sketch.